Alright, welcome. My name's Brian Taylor, and today we're going to be looking at Walgreens inventory management. So I chose Walgreens. Why did I choose Walgreens? One of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the U.S., over 8,500 stores, just a name everybody knows. I'm sure anybody listening to this has been to a Walgreens at some point. Big CVS fan, but still, Walgreens is huge. My girlfriend works at Walgreens, so I had to pick it. What are we going to do today? We're going to look at their inventory management, going to assess their performance, and then develop an improvement plan for certain things. And these are going to be based on issues like variability, bottlenecks, and quality control. Important thing here, inventory reliability is super huge for a pharmacy. Obviously, there's a lot of money involved. If we look at this map, tons of locations across the U.S. But also, these are things that people depend on for their lives sometimes. Pharmaceutical drugs, prescriptions, and even over-the-counter medication. A lot of people rely on it. So they need to be a reliable store. So let's look at the structure and inventory environment. So Walgreens kind of acts like two stores in one. It's a pharmacy and a retail store. Each side has different products, different customer needs. This makes managing inventory a big task because you're basically managing two stores. So to keep everything running smoothly, what do? They use job specialization. It means that employees have specific roles. Some work the register, some focus on stocking shelves. I think they still have the photo booth. Some work at that, and obviously then the pharmacy. Another thing that makes Walgreens unique, they have a huge range of products. Obviously, the two stores in one that we were talking about is a big part of that, but even just in the retail section, they have everything from like chapstick to food items to paper towels and tissues, and they have everything. It's basically like a small Walmart. And then obviously they have countless amount of both over-the-counter and prescription drugs. So because of this, Walgreens uses automated inventory tools. So they have a system that tracks sales and updates stock levels immediately. And this makes it easier to know what needs to be reordered, and it just helps to prevent the stockouts, the empty shelves. So let's look at the store level inventory management process. So this is what actually happens in each Walgreens store. So Walgreens follows a pretty structured process to manage the inventory. It starts with a point of sale system. This is what tracks every sale, and then when a stock is low, it sends an alert. When the alert comes in, manager looks it over, decides whether it's time to place an order or not. So if he decides to place the order, they'll get a shipment. When the shipment arrives, employees inspect everything. They check if anything's damaged. They make sure nothing's missing. They compare what they received to the packing list. This is very important too, because it means that what was ordered was actually received. And then this is super important because if they make any mistakes here, it can lead to issues down the line. So and after that, the team stocks the shelves, organizes whatever extra product, goes in the back room, and then finally, at the end of it, the employees use these handheld scanners that they have to update that POS system. So they look at what's on the shelves, and they put it into the system, and so now the POS system knows exactly what's in the store. So this is a flow chart of what I was just talking about. So there's the POS system monitoring the inventory. If stock gets too low, sends the alert. The manager reviews it. He decides to place the order. The supplier ships the product. The store gets the product. The employees, the team, looks everything over, makes sure that there's no defects, no shortages, make sure it matches the packing list. Then the team stocks the shelves, stocks the back room. They update the inventory levels using the handheld devices, so they update the POS system, and then that's it. So one of the biggest bottlenecks in this process is during the receiving and inspection stage. When a shipment arrives, when the store is super busy, there's oftentimes not enough staff to be available to deal with it. So then the orders can just sit in the back room waiting to be checked in. This slows down the entire cycle. Another issue that Walgreens used to face, they don't currently face, was that they had to enter all the stock data manually. So now they have those handheld sensors or scanners, sorry. So they put all the information into that rather than having to write it down manually, which was very time consuming. So I'm going to discuss some more improvements later on. This is one that they already took care of, so good on Walgreens. Then there's also some variation between stores. If we were looking at the store level process, but it can sometimes be a little bit different from store to store. And so then this leads to inconsistent processing times, which is another form of operational friction, and it can often lead to more delays. So let's look at some of the numbers. So the cycle time. On average, it takes about 3 minutes to stock one case of product. So inventory moving from the back room to the shelves is pretty quick, only 3 minutes. Once we know that, then we can estimate the capacity of roughly 20 cases per hour. So if an employee was only focused on stocking, like they're not doing anything else, then that's the upper limit. So the upper limit meaning the most that they could do. But in reality, they're not just doing one thing. They have different jobs. So that's where we get the utilization, and that comes to around 75%. And then we also made an assumption on the batch size. So we assumed a typical delivery for a store like Walgreens might include around 180 cases of product. And that number helps us model how much inventory a store receives at once, and then what the peaks and valleys, you could say, look like in their inventory levels. So the maximum and average inventory. So the maximum inventory right after a shipment comes in is about 45 cases. Then that inventory gradually decreases as the customers are obviously buying the products. Walgreens has a lot of customers. So then that gives us an average inventory of about 22.5 cases at any given time. So you walk into a Walgreens at any given time, probably 22.5 cases. So then this creates what's called a sawtooth pattern. Inventory jumps up when a delivery arrives, and then steadily drops until the next one. It's an extremely common pattern for businesses that restock in batches. So then the store has enough to meet the daily demand, but they're not holding a ridiculous amount of stock, overwhelming storage. So let's look at the big picture now. Walgreens relies on very frequent delivery cycles, and especially for the pharmacy items. A lot of the times the pharmacy items arrive daily, so that the essential medications are always in stock. Then they use data for almost all the replenishment decisions. We were talking about the POS system. It plays a massive role in this. Every sale goes through it, and then that helps update the demand forecast. So like predicting what's going to be in high demand based on what the customers are buying. The POS system does all those calculations. The regional distribution centers also play a key role. They receive products in large quantities, break them down, and then they send store-specific shipments based on each different location's needs. Then another advantage of operating on such a large network is that the stores can actually support each other. So if one location, let's say, all of a sudden experience a big spike in demand, then the stores around them can actually help them out and send over inventory. And then that gives Walgreens a little more flexibility, helps maintain the product levels that they need. So, let's take a look at how they set target inventory levels. So they use what's called the order up to model. So to show how this works, I had to use an example. I used an example of a common over-the-counter medication. We're saying on average the store sells about 120 units a week. The demand tends to vary, so there's a standard deviation of 25 units. Um, because Walgreens has a 2-week lead time, they need to forecast demand over the lead time plus 1 extra week. So a total of 3 weeks. Then that gives us an expected demand of 360 units over that period. And when we factor in the variability in demand and target a strong service level of 95%, the model gives us an order up to level of about 431 units. This means that the store is always looking to get inventory back up to around 431 units whenever it falls below that number. Basically make sure that they have enough supply to cover normal demand and any reasonable spikes. So not like everybody in the world is trying to get Tylenol, but cold season, people want Tylenol. It's a reasonable spike. And it also avoids excessive overstocking, like holding way too much Tylenol. So now we're going to look at some things that I think could use some improvement. First of all, demand variability. Products like allergy medicine, cold and flu medicine, vaccines, they can spike suddenly just depending on the season. When the demand swings like this, the stores will tend to overstock just in case. But then this increases costs because they're holding stock that they might not even need. The second improvement is lead time uncertainty. So Walgreens, as we said before, they rely on the regional distribution centers. Then when shipments are delayed because of whatever, like transportation issues, supplier shortages, the stores need to hold extra inventory once again, just to protect themselves, just in case. Then the third issue, process interruptions during receiving. If a large shipment arrives during a busy time, or just when the specific store is short-staffed, then the receiving process just slows down. Then that delay can ripple through the rest of the process. And then finally, inventory accuracy isn't perfect, even though they have these handheld scanners, still isn't perfect. Small errors like just items not being scanned, misplacing products, just like small minor discrepancies, it can build up and eventually lead to stockouts, to not having enough stock. And this is like, even if the POS system is saying that an item is available, it might still not be just because of human error. So I just believe all these issues have been forcing the stores to carry more inventory than they would need, just because the process isn't consistent, isn't predictable enough. So, the first part of the improvement plan, we're going to look at lean operations. Basically removing unnecessary steps and making the process more consistent across all the Walgreens stores. One of the biggest opportunities here is standardizing how deliveries are received and stocked. So right now, the different stores and sometimes even like different employees will handle these tasks in different ways, even if it's just slightly different. So if they make a clear step-by-step routine, it would just make the process much smoother, much more predictable. Another improvement, reducing motion waste. So a lot of the time, we'll just lose time because employees are searching for lost items in the back room, and this is because the back rooms aren't always organized the same way. So if they could just tighten up the backroom organization, so like clear labels, consistent shelf layouts, then the employees can get things done a lot faster. They can also reduce waiting waste. They can do this by assigning clear roles during deliveries. So instead of employees trying to figure out who should do this job, who should do that job, just have it clear beforehand. Like, you inspect this, you stage, you stock. And then finally, training. So they need to train the teams on these standardized routines. The more consistent the process is from store to store, there's less variation, and that directly lowers the amount of safety stock Walgreens needs to carry. So one of the biggest challenges for them is that certain products where the demand can spike pretty quickly, so like allergy medicine, the cold and flu medicine, the vaccines. Um, so because of this, they would benefit from stronger short-term forecasting. Specifically for these types of products, like the ones that um, spike pretty quickly. So this means that they're going to have to build forecasts that don't just look at the past sales, but also consider seasonal trends and even regional patterns. So, for example, the flu season might start earlier in Minnesota than it does in Florida. So if they incorporate that kind of information, they can make much more accurate decisions about how much inventory each store really needs. Another thing, smoothing out distribution center scheduling. When deliveries are too spread out or too unpredictable, the stores end up with inconsistent lead times. Then that forces Walgreens to carry more safety stock than they would actually need. So if they tighten up the delivery schedules and reduce the variability coming from the suppliers and distribution centers, then they can carry much less safety stock and at the same time still know that they will have enough products available. So this is just all about aligning better with the actual customer need, or demand rather, and then if they can do that, they can save a whole lot of money. And the final area for improvement, quality control. One of the best tools for this is statistical process control charts. What these charts do, they allow Walgreens to track things like demand variation, order accuracy, and stock out frequency over time. Instead of noticing issues only after a shelf goes empty, they would be able to spot trends before they turn into real problems. A big issue that can happen in retail is something called inventory drift. So inventory drift, this is where the system says there are five items on the shelf, but in reality there's only actually 2. And then like little errors during receiving, stocking, even just like counting the different items, that's what causes this inventory drift. So then if they are able to monitor these patterns, then they can identify exactly where the discrepancies are happening and then fix the root cause. So this would all help improve the order up to accuracy. If they know their data is more consistent, then the system can calculate replenishment needs much more accurately. So as a result, there will be fewer emergency orders, lower holding costs, because the stores aren't forced to overstock just in case. So there's better quality control, better service for customers, and more efficient operations for Walgreens. So if we look at everything taken together, what would it actually mean for Walgreens on a day-to-day basis? So first of all, by strengthening forecasting, standardizing workflows, and tightening lead times, Walgreens will be able to carry much less excess inventory. So inventory costs a lot of money just to hold. So if they're able to cut that in half, that would be massive. Second, they have smoother workflows and more predictable deliveries, then the replenishment cycles would become much more consistent. So they wouldn't be scrambling when things get busy, waiting on shipments if they get delayed. They just have a nice, stable rhythm that's easier for staff and the managers to manage. Then third, these improvements address one of the biggest customer pain points, which is stockouts, so not having enough stock. If there's more accurate data and they can improve on their quality control, then there's going to be fewer surprises. There's going to be fewer empty shelves and much fewer times when customers can't buy what they need. And then fourth and finally, if they match the inventory more closely with actual demand and they put products where they're actually needed, waste is reduced and there's going to be less emergency orders. So if they implement all these changes, it's just going to make stronger, leaner, and more reliable inventory management